Since his retirement, Gilbert Arenas has made a name for himself as a podcaster, a YouTuber, and as one of the most highly productive hot take machines in the media. I'm sure we all have various opinions on him as an analyst and as a podcaster, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about enlightening people on the value and legacy of Gilbert Arenas' basketball career. If you listen to Agent Zero talk about himself, you'd probably think he was one of the 75 greatest players of all time. But if you listen to the opinions of people who dislike him as an analyst, then you'd probably be convinced that he was a scrub who was nowhere close to being a legitimate superstar in the NBA. As someone who witnessed the entirety of his basketball career, my goal is to find the middle ground and give an accurate assessment on the quality of Arenas as a basketball player. So without further ado, let's get into it. Heading into the NBA, people didn't have tremendously high expectations for Arenas, as the 6'4" point guard was taken in the second round of the 2001 draft by the Golden State Warriors. His first season was a very modest debut in the league, as he only averaged 10 points on 45% shooting. With that being said, Gilbert is most famous for his time as a Wizard, and he didn't arrive in Washington until his third season in the league. This is where he would begin to establish himself as a legitimate threat in the league. When it comes to his skill set, he was a guy who was truly ahead of his time. If I'm being honest, I think he would be incredibly well suited to be a superstar player in modern 2023 basketball. He had a solid crossover dribble and a lethal pull-up jumper. In a way, I view him as a player who was similar to James Harden, in the sense that he was a volume shooter who loved taking step-back jumpers and who especially loved to take the majority of his shots from three-point distance. Also, in a way that's similar to Harden, Gilbert didn't have a very good field goal percentage. But when you combine that with his three-point shooting and his free throw shooting, he actually had a pretty decent true shooting percentage. Similar to an earlier star like Allen Iverson, Arenas was a flat-out gunner who could shoot you out of a game if he was having an off night, or he could lead you to a blowout victory with one of the most dangerous hot hands in the entire league. A perfect example of that was when he torched Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers by scoring 60 points, which is the most points ever scored against a Kobe Bryant-led team. Now, during his prime years in Washington, he didn't have any deep postseason runs, and some say that's because Arenas didn't have the most solid supporting cast, which is certainly true, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Arenas was a score-first point guard who would look for his own shot before looking to provide a solid shot for his teammate. I have to bring up the James Harden comparison yet again, but in a way that's similar to Harden, you can only describe Arenas as an average defender at best, and honestly, even that is probably a little too generous. On a more positive note, it would have been interesting to see Arenas in more playoff situations with a more solid supporting cast. Because in a way that's similar to Damian Lillard, he was one of the best clutch shot makers in the entire league, who seemingly had limitless range. At his best in 2006, he averaged 29 points, 6 assists, and 3 rebounds on 58.1 true shooting percentage. Later on in the first round of the playoffs, his 5th-seeded Wizards were taking on the 4th-seeded Cavaliers, and what ensued was one of the greatest solo battles in playoff history between Gilbert Arenas and LeBron James. Both players showed up with their best efforts, and Game 5 specifically was an absolute classic, as Arenas dropped 44 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on 58% shooting, while James put up 45 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists on 61% shooting. On the series as a whole, Arenas averaged 34, 5, and 5 on 46%, while LeBron averaged 35, 7, and 6 on 51%. Ultimately, it was LeBron's Cavs who won the series in 6 games. If anyone ever asks you to summarize how good Arenas was in his prime, you can simply tell them that he was good enough to go toe-to-toe with a young LeBron James in the playoffs. The following season, Arenas would again have a monstrous regular season, as he averaged 28 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds on 42% shooting. His Wizards finished with a 41-41 record, barely squeezing their way into the playoffs. and waiting for them again was LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Unfortunately, Gilbert would not be a part of this series though, because with only 7 games left in the regular season, he tore his MCL. Without their leading star, the Wizards were swept by LeBron and the Cavs. This was the beginning of the downward spiral of Gilbert's career, because after the MCL tear at the age of 25, his body would never fully recover and allow him to return to his near 30 points per game form. To add insult to injury, Arenas had his famous weapons incident in December of 2009, where he and his teammate Javaris Crittenton both drew weapons on each other in the Wizards locker room. After pleading guilty to a felony offense of carrying an unlicensed weapon, the reputation of Arenas had taken a major hit. The drama and health issues were taking their toll, and in 2011 he was traded to the Orlando Magic, where he was paired up with an elite Dwight Howard. In theory, this should have been a dominant tandem in the Eastern Conference, but unfortunately, Arenas was just a shell of what he once was, as he only averaged 8 points on 34% shooting in his 49 games with the Magic. After a disastrous finale season with the Grizzlies, he had played his final game in the NBA at just the age of 30. So to recap, Arenas was a 3-time All-Star and he made 3 All-NBA teams. At his best, he was a player who would occasionally outplay the best the game had to offer, like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. Although he was solid in the passing lanes and averaged a decent amount of steals, he was not a good on-ball defender by any means. Although he had stretches where he was an elite scorer, there's no question that he was a volume scorer, as he shot a career 42.1% from the field. Some of that efficiency begins to balance out when you look at his true shooting percentage. But make no mistake, this guy was a shoot-first point guard in a similar way to a prime Allen Iverson. In his career, he never got past the second round of the playoffs, but you could certainly argue that this fact had more to do with his injuries and a lack of a solid supporting cast, rather than an actual indication of his weaknesses. If you ask me, I believe he was a much better player than a podcaster. But what I will not dispute is that whether it was on the court or off the court, this man has never been accused of being boring. That's for sure. So what do you guys think? What was Gilbert's potential if he never had the knee injuries? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.